all the way down into Atlanta and Birmingham. Look at this. Can you imagine what a fetch or a distance this moisture has traveled from the Atlantic? Darker greens indicating the heavier snows, and visibility is restricted by the snow coming down, the wind, and it's just whipping it around into a fury. D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, up in Long Island, see these darker greens coming at you. That's moderate to heavy snowfall, and the snows continue to come down very quickly in Boston and Hartford. Now, earlier snowfall rates late afternoon were at 4 inches an hour in New York City, 3 to 4 inches an hour, and we could see some of those numbers show up in southern New England tonight. We'll come back. We'll update the highways for the Monday Morning Rush next.
What in the world?
Dad took it when you walked me to school that first day, remember?
It's a
bit of an evening lull taking place as our storm organizes off the coast down in here. You can see these darker green shades move to the north. We get into lighter snow. And now as the storm begins to wind up off the coast, we'll see some heavier snow develop again as the night goes on. Let's take a look at some live shots coming to us from New Bedford, where you can see the wind is whipping and the snow is falling. And probably on the order of 4 to 5 inches in New Bedford. I've got some reports of 6 to 8 inches of snow already on the ground in our northwest hills. So what's going on as far as the storm right now? Well, again, it's beginning to organize off of Norfolk, Virginia, moving toward the east-northeast, and it'll really begin to wind up to quite a storm with wind gusts 60, 65 miles an hour, possible hammering parts of the Cape, coastal flooding, beach erosion problems there. Also some flooding possible northern areas of Long Island, and we'll have to keep an eye on Narragansett Bay. Snowfall tallies, again, we ought to be somewhere in this range of 12 to 18. We may mix a little sleet on the Cape, somewhere in this range across most of the rest of the area. Lesser amounts off to the north. We'll be back with another update in about a half an hour.
This is the northern edge of the snow area, which is ever so slowly pivoting up. It does appear now that the 6-inch snow line is going to get from about Albany to about Concord, New Hampshire to Portland, Maine. And then the amounts will have built up very steadily as you go south and east when all is said and done. Now, we really be updating this as we go along. It's over 15 inches apparently at LaGuardia Airport, according to their measurements, over 10 at Kennedy, over 15 at Philly, and now 20 inches at Dulles around Washington, D.C. But we now have reports of 4 inches on the ground in Hopkinton, 6 inches on the ground in Sharon, 3 inches plus here in Boston, and about 2 inches or so now pushing that around Cape Ann, and about 1 inch near the Massachusetts-New Hampshire border. That's the current situation. But here comes all the moisture that's first rotating on up, and will get heavier and heavier all night, and the winds are going to get very strong as well. So there's going to be tremendous blowing and drifting and reduced visibility. So there finally is officially a blizzard warning. Of course, we've been telling you that this basically is a blizzard since much, much earlier today. Now, all of this then has to move through the area, and it's going to take until about 7 o'clock tomorrow night before that finally happens. So that's the story on that. Here's the storm. It'll take its slow trip over the next 24 hours to the northeast with a swath of snow against the bitter cold Arctic air, and it's a very powerful storm indeed. High tide of some concern tomorrow at Scituate. We may have some live pictures of Scituate to show you. If not, we're certainly going to be showing them to you later tonight at 11. And here you go. Again, it's just wind-whipped snow, and this is going to get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. I'm quite confident that most of our area is going to wind up with an excess of 1.5 feet of snow, and over 2 feet of snow is not out of the question for Boston, and is actually a very strong likelihood for many parts of the coastal South Shore, maybe coastal Cape Ann as well. A very, very impressive storm indeed.
As Harvey says, this is the real thing.
This certainly is the real thing. And of course, you didn't have to be meteorologists to predict that there were going to be lots of school cancellations. We have them coming into the...
To the right, those are where we have the thunderstorms developing out over the Gulf Stream, and it's that very warm water, temperatures in the 60s to near 70, the water temperature actually energizing the storm, and the moisture gets thrown back in the cold air, and you end up with plenty of snowfall. And one spot which has been hammered by the snow since late last night, along with gusty winds, has been Washington, D.C. The Weather Channel's Jeff Morrow is there, standing in the midst.
Coming and going, it hasn't barely made it into Maine right now. As a matter of fact, the leading edge is not reaching the ground, but we've had reports of as much as 7 inches off to the south of Boston. And notice some of the darker greens showing up. They've been lifting through our area, but then sort of fizzling out as they track off to the north. They run into some dry air. It's 10 below, and the stars are out up in northern Maine right now. New York City has already had about 15 inches of snow, 26 in Philadelphia. The storm center right now is to the northeast of Norfolk, Virginia, and by tomorrow midday it's going to be in a classic location, setting up all kinds of snow situations, whiteout conditions, and there will be some coastal flooding at the time of high tide around 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Now, here's the forecast. as we check it out for the morning. And we're going to be seeing the heavy snow continuing. Now, at times it may drop off to light to moderate, but with wind-blown gusts over 40 and 50 miles an hour, especially at the coast, it will seem a lot worse, even if the snow is falling at a light intensity. Same thing by noontime, temperatures staying below freezing, maybe mixing with a little sleet over Cape Cod, and then things will begin to wind down by very late in the day and tomorrow night. So we have a lot more to go. Snow lovers rejoice, but I think a lot of us will be dealing with a lot of shoveling. I'll talk about the totals in just a few minutes. Janice?
Okay, Jim, we'll check back with you. Well, it's a tough enough problem to find a parking space in the city in good weather. But when you add a couple of feet of snow to the mix, it's close to impossible. UPN 38 reporter Kim Walden has been out surveying the parking problem and some of the creative ways Bostonians deal with it, and she joins us from Newton with more. Good evening, Kim.
Good evening, Janice. If you drive down any off street in Boston, you might think there was a garage sale going on or something like that. But people are working so hard at digging out their cars that they're actually claiming parking spots by using ironing boards, chairs, or anything they can find. The problem is, if you're not lucky enough to find a spot, you're forced to park where you're not supposed to.
Midnight snow emergency. All vehicles must be off the roadway in the designated areas.
That's right. If you normally park your car on a snow emergency route, you better find someplace else to put it tonight, because chances are it won't be there in the morning.
Snow emergency goes into effect at 12 a.m. and they'll start tagging and towing all the major arteries wherever it's posted for emergency snow removal. And they'll tow just about anything that isn't where it's supposed to be.
The Cambridge Police has towed more than 500 cars during the last two snowstorms, and tonight won't be any different. At $30 a tow plus storage, it can get expensive. But there are other options if you can find them.
The parking garage on Green Street, or if they can find off-street parking someplace, it's the best thing they can do.
Many people can't afford parking garages, and off-street parking is becoming so scarce that once residents shovel out
solid foot of snow on the ground, while from Providence to Cape Cod there'll be a foot or more down through Hartford, and certainly New York City there'll be lesser amounts back through southern New Hampshire. But before all said and done, we're looking for 1 to 2 feet of snow from around the Merrimack Valley down through Cape Cod. So that's it. Now here's Pam.
Mark, thank you very much. Jack Harper is live in Chatham. It's been snowing for several hours on Cape Cod. Jack?
It has, Pam. It started about 3:30 down here. We're now somewhere in the area of 6 to 8 inches of snow, though it's hard to tell because the wind is blowing so hard that it's not really piling up consistently anywhere. As you can see, the drifting is the major problem tonight. The winds are already at 40 miles an hour and better. We expect them up to about 60 to 65 through the night and tomorrow morning. And the main concern then will be high tides. The next one at 1 in the morning shouldn't be too terribly bad. The one at 1 tomorrow afternoon is the one officials here are most concerned about.
is a special edition of WeatherScope with the latest winter storm update.
Wind-driven snow continues to paralyze the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Also, we're looking, unfortunately, ahead to tonight and tomorrow with provoking flooding, heavy flooding, and serious problems along the coast. And down south in Florida, a killer freeze tonight and tomorrow night. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel Forecast Center. I'm Mike Seidel from Atlanta. These are all aspects of the blizzard of 96, which continues to throw the moisture back into the cold air. And you can see all the darker colors, the blues indicating the higher cloud tops or the colder cloud tops. And off the coast, those bright colors indicating thunderstorms out over the Gulf Stream. And that warm water in the Gulf Stream really helped to fuel the storm. Pressures have dropped down below 990 millibars, and certainly not as low as the blizzard of 83 or certainly the President's Day storm of 79, but still the snowfall amounts have been prolific of historical proportions. And one of the spots which may break its 24-hour snowfall record, that remains to be seen, is Washington, D.C. It's still coming down pretty hard in the suburbs, over 20 inches. And our very own Jeff Morrow from the Weather Channel has been camped out just down the road from the Capitol. And Jeff, it looks like it's snowing and blowing again pretty hard.
It is snowing and blowing again pretty hard here, Mike. Just when we think that this storm is going to loosen its grip here on the nation's capital, it just winds back up again and throws another big dose of, well, we've had sleet, we've had small little snow pellets we showed you about an hour or so ago. It tried to clear up a little bit, some dry air came in, and then it started snowing hard again. So we're definitely not out of the woods here yet. It's hard to estimate the snow total here anymore because the wind is blowing and drifting this powdery, sugary snow around a lot. But I would estimate about 15 inches or so on the ground here on the Mall. The Capitol, which we have been able to show you behind me for several hours, we can't do that because you can't see the Capitol from here. That's about a half mile away. It's obscured by the snow once again tonight.
And just checking the observation from National Airport, not far from you, sustained winds at over 20 miles an hour, and they'll be picking up and becoming gusty tonight and tomorrow. So we're going to have blowing and drifting of the snow, and that's going to hamper the road crews, certainly, although the rush hour tomorrow morning coming in on the Shirley Highway or the Capitol Beltway is probably going to be lackluster at best.
At best, Mike, and from what I was just hearing on the local radio stations here, a lot of businesses, as well as the local D.C. government and the schools, they're all closed tomorrow, so I don't think there shouldn't be a lot of people on the roads anyway.
Well, Congress got the government back open a couple of nights ago, and now Mother Nature shuts it down. Jeff Morrow live from the Mall in Washington. We'll check back with Jeff in about a half an hour. Now looking on the unbelievable snowfall totals. If you've been following this storm, take a look at Philadelphia. This is an all-time 24-hour total in Philadelphia, 27 inches, and it's still coming down. Also, Roanoke and Lynchburg, those are both 24-hour totals. Washington out in the suburbs at Dulles Airport, 20 inches now, and 16 in New York at LaGuardia, a little bit less in the Park. In Boston, where it just began snowing hard recently, up to 4 inches, but by this time tomorrow, a foot to 2 feet of snow across a good deal of southern New England. In New York City, the Weather Channel's Jill Brown has been keeping up with the snowfall. It's still snowing right there where she's planted in Central Park. Jill, give us the latest.
Well, Mike, we are on the south side of Central Park, and we are in an area that is protected a little bit, so we don't have the kind of strong winds that we have just over here on Central Park West, where there's not much traffic at this hour. We have Central Park West, 1 block over Broadway. There are a few cabs that come by occasionally, the city bus, but there is a state of emergency now, so you are not to be on the roadways unless you're an emergency vehicle or in an emergency situation yourself. So I think that's helped out quite a bit. That and the fact that all of the ball games have been canceled, schools have been closed, just a lot of businesses at this point are beginning to close. So morning rush hour tomorrow, in spite of the fact that the snow will continue to pile up tonight, may be relatively calm, with hopefully everyone staying home except those that really, really have to get into work on Monday. I want to quickly take a look over at the bench because we know you want to see how much snow we have at this point. We've continued to measure. I'm getting into some big drifts at this point, and it hasn't been piling up as heavy as it was before, but you can see we got some pretty decent amounts here, maybe about a foot, and it's coming down at the rate of maybe an inch an hour, maybe not quite that heavy, but definitely continuous.
Okay, Jill, Next time you go out to New York, we're going to take you, give you a Weather Channel yardstick to take along in a storm like this, because you may need the yardstick. That's Jill Brown live from Central Park in New York, and again, we'll go back to New York and Jill in about 25 minutes. Now, I'll take a look at the video from Long Island. You think it was snowing hard in New York City today. Look at these scenes from out around Amityville in the South Shore in Suffolk County. Massapequa, Lindenhurst, West Babylon, Deer Park, Brentwood, you were all getting hammered by snow, blowing snow. Four-wheel drive vehicles, the best to get around in this kind of action. And look at that visibility, almost next to nothing. And unfortunately, the emergency vehicles are out. Fortunately, the plows, though, were trying to keep up with snowfall rates at the rate of 3 to 4 inches an hour. Imagine that, 4 inches an hour. Back in '83, we had snowfall totals at the rate of 5 inches an hour. So that's a pretty hefty snowfall rate. Let's take a look at the radar right now. You can see where it's still snowing. And this is basically all snow, except for Salisbury, Maryland. As far as we know, it's all snow in this area, even down south in Georgia. We're still getting some snow showers coming down at a pretty good clip the past hour around Gainesville. Visibility is below a mile. The snow showers continue in Atlanta and Birmingham, adding more snow to the highways, and certainly it's going to be a rough rush hour, especially in those areas which didn't melt off today. Moving in a little bit closer, we can see the heavier snows, the darker green here on the radar, now stretching from around Baltimore and Washington. Look at this dark green north of Atlantic City, moving up towards Asbury Park. Snows really advancing quickly towards Boston. But if you're in northern New England, we're not going to see the snows advancing, the heavier snows advancing too far into New Hampshire and southern sections of Vermont, even up through the Capital District. Albany is not getting a whole lot of snow, and the heaviest will be downstate. Speaking of downstate, let's go down into the Carolinas and Georgia, and we can still see some evidence.
When heartburn...
Now your local. Don't miss Sniper.
Always clear to me had become like a black highway at night. We were in uncharted territory now.
Coming up.
And on the Cape, an additional concern, erosion. News 4 begins now.
Now, Casey Kaufman, Barry Burbank, Bob Lobel. Now, live, this is WBZ News 4.
The biggest blanket of white yet this winter season. It could be the worst storm in years. You're looking at a live picture from outside our studios. Good evening, everyone. I'm Casey Kaufman. One of the is upon us, and we're only into its early stages. Up to 2 feet of snow is expected in and around Boston, and communities up and down the eastern seaboard are getting clobbered. Meteorologist Barry Burbank is the very latest now from the Weather Office. Barry?
You're right, Casey. This is a biggie, and we're going to be dealing with it through tomorrow. Looks like we'll have some snow of varying intensity, waves of snow moving through, some of it coming down very hard indeed at times right on through much of tomorrow morning. Let's check the map right now and see where it's snowing, and the radar is following that easily for us as we see elements of snow pivoting up from the south. There's going to be a sharp cutoff line from a tremendous amount of snow to not much snow at all across northwestern Massachusetts and into northern New England, as you can see there. It looks like that by 7 a.m. we're going to have snowfall totals as such, with a blizzard warning in effect now by the National Weather Service. We should have up 9 to 14 inches of snow in the Boston area by 7 a.m., 5 to 9 inches across northern portions of Massachusetts, perhaps a little lower totals across the northwestern Berkshires, 2 to 5 up just north of Nashua, 14 to 18 from Providence over to Plymouth. There could be occasionally some sleet mixing in over southeastern Massachusetts out of this, but a blizzard warning is in effect through a portion of tomorrow, and a coastal flood warning is in effect as well. High tides at midday, and there will be some wave battery and some damage along some coastal points. If we can keep the wind more northerly tomorrow, we're in a little bit better shape than if we had a straight northeast wind, which would cause a little more destruction along the coast. We'll have a lot of details for you as we come back with a complete forecast in about 10 minutes. Casey?
All right, we'll see you in a couple of minutes, Barry. Thank you. And are the crews ready for the storm?
Estimate of amounts. We'll spend more time on this later. The South Shore is probably going to be the jackpot with over 20 inches, but parts of Cape Ann and maybe even Boston have a shot at 20 plus as well. Very heavy further off to the southwest and a gradual abatement to the northwest. The eastern half of Cape Cod will be somewhat reduced, possibly, as some sleet and rain may mix in at the height of the storm in the wee hours of the morning and early tomorrow. Of course, I'll have much, much more for you in a little while.
Okay, Harvey, thanks. Our Team 7 coverage continuing now. This blizzard of 96 with reporter Janet Wu, who's trying to brave it in Scituate. Janet, how are you?
Not feeling very brave right now. We just heard all the official stuff from Harvey. All I can add is the obvious, that the weather outside is frightful, and snow is especially...
Let me try mine. You have a legal parking space like that one. Leave your car there until this storm is over.
The roads on those streets have got to be passable for fire apparatus or any emergency vehicle.
And the plowing, but I think most...
We're right on Route 1, right by the tower in South Kingstown. As I walk back...
It's very light. What's the intensity right now?
It's moderate to heavy right now, Tony. Looking across the parking lot here, the visibility is probably down to 1/4 of a mile at this point. The driving is treacherous. We
to buy necessities before the storm hit. Take a look at the bread aisle. It is completely empty.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't hit the milk and bread aisle yet, so I don't know what I'm going to...
This is about 7:45 on Monday, January the 8th.